So in this story, we're going to be talking about how veterans from World War II had their pensions frozen when they moved abroad, and so this is a pretty this is stupid, to be honest. That's the best way to put it. This is like, why this has happened, I have no idea. So campaigners are calling on the government to restore full state pensions to World War II veterans who moved abroad after retirement. More than 500,000 UK state pensioners have had their pensions frozen after moving overseas, including 100,000 who served in the armed forces. So we're a country that celebrated VE Day recently, talking about how we the war, we defeat fascism, all this stuff, yeah, and we're failing to reward some of the last remaining survivors who moved abroad, who fought in the war and helped out in the war. The government says it says it increases the value of pensions in other countries where it's legally required to do so. So I don't know, like, what the hell that's supposed to mean. Like, you're just following the legal bare minimums for pensioners, especially the ones who sacrifice greatly, so we wouldn't live under the thumb of fascism and right wing populism. These are the people who made big sacrifices. So that we could be free, and it's important to honour them. Veterans have been called the forgotten heroes after an ever dwindling band who feel they've been let down by the country they served. This very reminds me a lot of the 9/11 first responders who had to keep going back to Congress to ask for money for healthcare, and essentially John Stewart, the great man, had to shame Congress into actually helping these people. And this is what this reminds me of. A shame we don't have a John Stewart in this country who would shame the government into doing something about this. So many left the UK to join families who had settled in other Commonwealth countries like Australia and Canada. Inez Mink worked as a nurse in field hospitals in Europe, tending to Allied soldiers as well as German and Italian prisoners. She even treated an exhausted Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery towards the end of the war. Now aged 87, she recalls spending VE Day entertaining the wounded in a Belgian hospital with performances of the tango and Mexican hat dance. But she has less to celebrate 75 years on. Inez moved to Australia in 1986 with her husband after a career in nursing in the UK. It was only then she found out her pension had been frozen. So if she was living in the UK, she'd receive a state pension of £134, but because she moved abroad, she only gets £40. So she gets, what, a third of what she would have got had she stayed here. And why it's like this, I have no idea. Genuinely, I'm very perplexed at this whole situation, and this is important to note. It's not a left-right issue. She moved to Australia during, I think it was Thatcher's term in office, and so we've had successive Labour and Conservative governments who could have fixed this issue, even a Lib Dem one coalition who could have fixed this issue, but for some reason have chosen not to. And if this is just to save money, it's ridiculous. She lives on her own in Perth and is partially deaf and blind. In the past, she has struggled with medical bills, and obviously, if you're living abroad, health insurance, especially if you're old, is very hard to get in certain countries. I don't know what the Australian healthcare system is like, but given the fact that she has expensive medical bills, I can assume that they're not. They haven't included her in a single payer system if Australia do have one. She said it was the injustice that rankles, having paid taxes and national insurance in the UK for nearly all her working life. To expect Australia to pick up the tab is a bit of cheek. She said explaining the situation to Australian friends made her feel a little bit sad to be English, she added. So here you have a person who was a nurse who helped veterans out during and after the war, and she feels a little bit sad to be English. Let that sink in. And Puckeridge, 94, is more forthright. She says, I'm ashamed to be British. She served with the armed forces in India during World War II. After a full working life spent in the UK, she moved to Canada almost 20 years ago to be with her daughter. Anne has had her pension frozen to £72.50 a week, so it's higher than the other person we spoke about, nearly half the amount she would be entitled to if she were living in the UK. Since moving to Canada, she has been campaigning for British government to pay her full index-linked pension as part of the end of the frozen pensions campaign. I call it fraud. She said, we pay for our pensions on exactly the same terms as every other pensioner, which they did, and yet without being warned, because we have come to a commonwealth country, which is an outdated term which I think should be phased out. We receive no further indexation until we die, which is ridiculous, to be honest. It highlights the anomaly. If Anne were living across the border in the United States, she would be receiving her full pension. So what the UK government is doing is basically skimping on these people's pensions and letting down people that have given their lives for this country, whether that be in ordinary work or the ones who served in the war. The US, along with Israel, most European countries have a reciprocal arrangement with the US, but most Commonwealth countries do not. And so, the fact that the UK could come up with an agreement with Commonwealth countries, we're meant to be doing trade deals with these countries, or we can't even get like a reciprocal a pension deal with them. More than half the UK state pensioners have moved abroad and have been caught in this trap, including an estimated 100,000 who have served in the armed forces. It's ridiculous. Campaigners want to remind politicians of what they see as an injustice on May 8th, VE Day. So that's gone. That was, I think, let's have a look. This video is going out on the 20th. So that was about just under 2 weeks ago. Actress Miriam Margolis is among those calling for the change in policy. We can't stand and cheer the veterans with one hand waving flags and then freeze their pensions and close their purses because they retired to be with their family in a commonwealth country, said. It is not fair play, not British really. I think that's as British as you can get, being scummy in some ways. In a statement, the Department of Work and Pensions defended the policy, saying the government continues to uprate state pensions overseas where there's a legal limit to do so. So they're just following the law. They're not doing something which they're, you could argue, morally obligated to do. It's also estimated the cost would be $3 billion over 5 years. So these people, they're not, to the government, they're not worth the money. $3 billion seems like a lot of money, especially because that money's not going back into our own economy. But at the same time, they worked here, they earned the money, they paid tax, they paid national insurance, they paid into their pensions. Why should they be let down because they move away? It doesn't make sense. And 95 knows that time is not on her side, but time is also running out for those who wish to honour the wartime generation. I cannot understand why the country I had served had failed me, she said. And this is a damning article. And not to make light of this, but to sum up how the country, treats certain people, will clap and cheer for them. But when it comes to giving them money, no chance. This is how we celebrate people. This is how. When asked for these people to make a sacrifice, they didn't. People like Anne, when they were asked to help out in the war, they did. And so people nowadays, you have them, ask them, can you stay home? They do this instead. Honestly, it makes me just very angry. And it's not just like the thing is, I can't argue it's just Boris or Theresa May or Cameron, because it was Blair, Gordon Brown as well, John Major as well. And so it just makes me sick that this is happening to these people, and the fact that they're being made to fight for a pension which they should have gotten already. And so it does make you feel a bit sick, to be honest. Especially if you're one of those rah Britain, we can do whatever we want. Like, we're not even paying these people properly. Like, the government have either through, it seems like, immorality because of a cost cutting measure, have chosen not to help these people. And so I do feel bad because I think it was this person here saying she's partially deaf, her medical bills are rising. What's she supposed to do if she can't afford her bills? It's shameful. It's shameful, it really is. And look, I'm going to leave it there. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think Britain has done the right thing in saving $3 billion, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot of money, or do you think that we should actually be funding these people's pensions properly? Let me know what you guys think, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.